I didn't leave home running from anything. I left standing straight, chest full, believing I knew exactly who I was and where I was going. You need to understand this first. When you choose a hard path, it's not always because you're brave. Sometimes it's because you want your life to mean something. I joined the military not for medals, not for applause, not to feel powerful. I joined because I was tired of drifting. I wanted discipline to shape me. I wanted purpose to give my days weight. I wanted to look in the mirror and respect the man staring back. At home, everyone saw a uniform. Inside, I was still a son, still a brother, still a man in love. My mother tried to be strong, but her eyes betrayed her. She touched my shoulder like she was memorizing it. My younger brother watched quietly, trying to act grown, trying not to show fear. And then there was her, the woman who knew my softer side, the woman who knew my doubts, my scars, my quiet dreams. My fiancée. You don't forget the way someone looks at you when they believe in you completely. Her hand shook when she held mine. Her tears fell, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to remind me that love isn't loud, it's deep. The ring on her finger caught the light, and in that moment, it felt like proof. Proof that no matter how far I went, something real was waiting for me. We made promises that day. Not dramatic ones, honest ones. We promised patience. We promised trust. We promised to hold on, even when days got long and nights got lonely. I believed those promises because I believed in her. And maybe more than that, I believed in us. Distance didn't scare me. Time didn't scare me. I had faith, the kind that makes you walk into uncertainty with calm steps. I thought love, real love, didn't weaken with space. I thought it matured. I thought it learned to wait. As the bus pulled away, I didn't feel loss. I felt pride. Pride in serving something bigger. Pride in becoming someone stronger. Pride in knowing that while I trained my body and mind, my future was safe. Protected. Untouched. That's the part nobody tells you about sacrifice. You don't always feel pain at the beginning. Sometimes it feels like clarity, like doing the right thing, like growth. I told myself I wasn't leaving my life behind. I was building it, brick by brick, discipline by discipline, day by day. I believed the man I was becoming would be worthy of the life I dreamed of. If you've ever stood at the edge of a big decision, you know this feeling. That quiet confidence, that belief that doing the hard thing will reward you in the end. You don't think about what could change while you're gone. You think about what you'll bring back. I carried their faces with me. My mother's strength, my brother's pride, my fiancée's faith. They became my armor when training got brutal. They became my reason when exhaustion tried to break me. And as I crossed that line into a new life, I didn't feel like I was losing anything. I felt like I was protecting it. I didn't know then that the same distance I trusted would one day test everything I believed about love, loyalty, and myself. The nights were the hardest. Not the training, not the shouting, not even the fear. It was the silence that crawled in when everything finally stopped. During the day, life was brutal but simple. Wake up before your body was ready. Push past limits you didn't know existed. Learn how fear feels in your chest and how to move anyway. You learn fast that pain is temporary, but quitting stays with you. Around me were men just like me, different stories, same exhaustion. Brotherhood wasn't something we talked about. It was something that formed quietly in shared suffering, in nods that said, I see you. I've got you. But when the lights went out and the noise faded, that's when the mind turned against you. That's when I reached for her letters. I read them like they were oxygen, over and over. Her words carried her voice. They reminded me that somewhere beyond the dust, the drills, and the walls, I was still loved. She wrote about home, about small things, about missing me. I memorized the way she signed her name. I traced sentences with my thumb like I could feel her through the paper. Those letters got me through nights when my hands shook and my heart felt heavier than my body could handle. At first, everything felt normal. The timing, the warmth, the effort. I told myself, see, this works. Love survives distance. Love adapts. Then the words started to shrink. Not all at once. Slowly, almost politely. Paragraphs became lines. Lines became sentences. The questions she used to ask disappeared. The details faded. I noticed it, but I didn't say anything. A soldier learns not to complain about small discomforts. Calls started getting missed. When we did talk, she sounded tired, distracted, somewhere else. I told myself she was overwhelmed. Life doesn't pause just because you leave. I told myself she was scared. That distance does strange things to people. I told myself a lot of things, because believing those excuses hurt less than facing the alternative. There was one night I sat on my bunk, phone in my hand, staring at the screen long after it went dark. Around me, other soldiers slept or pretended to. One of them, a guy who had already seen too much life, noticed the look on my face. He didn't ask questions. He just sat next to me and said, "You good?" That was it. 2 words. But sometimes that's all it takes to almost break you. I nodded, because that's what you do. You nod. You swallow it. You stay composed. Soldiers don't unravel over feelings. Soldiers don't panic over silence. But deep down, something had shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a quiet fear that settled in your chest like weight you can't drop. A question you refuse to finish. You feel it when you read a message twice, looking for something that isn't there. You feel it when you hesitate before calling, afraid of confirming what your instincts already know. I started rereading old letters instead of waiting for new ones. That's when you know something is wrong. Still, I held the line. I stayed disciplined, focused, loyal. I told myself doubt was weakness, that trust meant believing even when it was hard. I reminded myself why I left in the first place. I was building a future, enduring now, so I could come back stronger. But here's the truth nobody prepares you for. You could train your body to endure almost anything. Your heart doesn't follow the same rules. Every unanswered call taught me patience. Every short reply taught me restraint. And every quiet night taught me how easy it is to lie to yourself when the truth feels too dangerous. I didn't confront it. I didn't ask the hard questions. I told myself silence didn't mean absence. I told myself love doesn't always sound the same. And maybe that's where the real battle began. Not on the field, but inside me, between what I felt and what I was afraid to admit. I didn't find out the way people warn you about. There was no dramatic confession, no explosion of truth. It was small, accidental, quiet enough to ruin everything. I was sitting alone when the message came through. Not from her. That was the first strange thing. It was forwarded. A photo that wasn't meant for me. A name I didn't recognize attached to words that didn't belong in my world. For a second, my mind refused to process it. I stared at the screen like it was written in a language I didn't know. Your body reacts before your thoughts do. My hand started shaking. Not fear, not anger, something colder. That sick feeling when reality doesn't match the story you've been telling yourself. I told myself it was nothing. A mistake. A misunderstanding. I looked for any explanation that didn't hurt. I zoomed in. Read it again. Then again. Denial is fast. It shows up before truth ever gets the chance. I told myself it could be old. It could be a joke. It could be someone else's message forwarded by accident. I searched for logic like it could save me. Because once you accept even the possibility of betrayal, something inside you knows it can never go back. I didn't explode. I didn't accuse. I didn't let myself feel too much. I did what you do when you're scared of the answer. I confronted her carefully. Soft words. Calm tone. I gave her space to explain. I wanted reassurance more than honesty. I wanted her to take it from my hands and tell me I was imagining things. She answered quickly. Too quickly. She laughed it off. Said it was nothing. Said I was tired. Said I was overthinking. She told me the name meant nothing. That the photo wasn't what it looked like. Her words were smooth, practiced, almost comforting. And that's when something broke. Not because I had proof. Not because I knew the truth. But because my instinct stopped trusting her voice. You feel it when someone lies to protect themselves, not you. There's a pause where there shouldn't be one. A warmth that feels forced. An explanation that answers questions you didn't ask. I wanted to believe her so badly that it hurt. I nodded through the call like a man agreeing to his own sentence. After we hung up, the silence felt different. He had a name now, a shape, a presence. Someone who existed in her world without my knowledge. I didn't know who he was, but I hated the space he occupied in my mind. I hated that I couldn't erase him. A mutual friend messaged later that night. Nothing direct, just a casual comment that didn't line up with what she told me. A detail that slipped. Another thread pulled loose. Still not enough to confirm anything, just enough to deepen the fracture. Confusion is cruel like that. It doesn't give you answers. It just takes away peace. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Every shortened message, every missed call, every excuse I made for her. Suddenly, they lined up differently. Not as proof, but as patterns. And once you see patterns, you can't unsee them. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt disoriented, like the ground under me had shifted, but the world expected me to keep standing straight. I questioned my judgment, my trust, my strength. I asked myself if I was paranoid or naive, strong or stupid, loyal or blind. That's the most dangerous part of betrayal. It makes you doubt yourself before it ever confirms the other person's guilt. I went through training the next day like a machine, followed orders, did my job. Nobody noticed the crack forming behind my eyes. That's the thing about soldiers. We're trained to hide damage until it becomes undeniable. But inside, something had changed forever. I realized then that love doesn't break all at once. Sometimes it fractures quietly, in moments you weren't meant to see, through messages you were never supposed to read. And even without proof, even without confession, a part of me already knew. The hardest truths don't arrive screaming. They arrive softly and leave you standing in the ruins of what you thought was unshakable. You don't get time to fall apart when duty still calls your name. The world doesn't slow down because your heart is bleeding. Orders still come. Boots still hit the ground. Missions still move forward. And you move with them, even when something inside you is tearing itself apart quietly, piece by piece. On the outside, I was functioning. Sharp, obedient, reliable. I followed commands, checked my gear, did my job like nothing had changed. That's what discipline teaches you. How to keep moving even when you feel hollow. But inside, I was unraveling in ways I didn't recognize anymore. Every quiet moment became dangerous. My mind replayed memories like they were interrogations. Her smile, her promises, the way she cried when I left. I started questioning everything. Was I not enough? Was leaving a mistake? Did choosing purpose mean I deserved this? I carried anger with me, sharp, burning anger, but I didn't know where to aim it. At her, at myself, at the distance, at the uniform I once wore with pride. Shame crept in quietly. Shame that I didn't see it coming. Shame that I trusted so fully. Shame that while I was learning how to survive under pressure, I couldn't even protect my own heart. Humiliation followed close behind. The kind that makes you feel exposed, even when no one knows your story. You start imagining how it looks from the outside. The man who left believing in love. The man who might have been replaced. I blamed myself more than anyone else. I told myself I chose this, that I walked away, that if I had stayed, things would be different. That sacrifice only mattered if it was returned. Those thoughts don't scream, they whisper. And whispers are harder to fight because they sound like your own voice. There were days I wanted exhaustion to knock me out just so I wouldn't have to think. Nights where sleep wouldn't come, and I lay staring into the dark, feeling smaller than I ever had. Around me, other soldiers laughed, joked, leaned on each other. I was still part of them, but I felt separated by something invisible, like I was fighting a battle no one else could see. One day, during a routine check, a senior officer stopped me. He didn't raise his voice, didn't question my performance. He just looked at me longer than necessary, like he was reading between the lines. "You're solid," he said, "but you're carrying something." I didn't respond. I didn't know how. He didn't push. He just said quietly, "Pain doesn't excuse failure, but it explains it. Don't let it decide who you become." That was it. No lecture, no sympathy, just truth, handed to me without judgment. That moment didn't fix anything, but it anchored me. I realized survival isn't always about being strong. Sometimes it's about refusing to collapse publicly while you're rebuilding privately. Sometimes it's about doing your duty even when your heart feels like a liability. You don't get the luxury of falling apart when others depend on you. So I kept going. I trained harder, not to escape the pain, but to contain it. I learned how to compartmentalize, how to put the memories away long enough to function. Fellow soldiers noticed the change. They didn't ask. They just stayed close. Sometimes support isn't words. It's presence. Inside, I was still breaking, but I was also surviving. That's something no one tells you. You can bleed internally and still stand upright. You can be shattered and still serve. You can hate yourself in one moment and hold the line in the next. This wasn't courage. It was endurance. And as much as it hurt, I began to understand something important. The fact that I was still standing didn't mean I was weak. It meant I hadn't let pain strip me of my responsibility, my discipline, or my identity. My heart was breaking, but I was still here. And sometimes, in the middle of quiet suffering, that's what survival looks like. I stopped asking softly, not because I was angry, but because something inside me was done pretending. I asked her straight this time. No space to dodge. No gentle tone. Just the truth, laid out like a line she could either cross or finally respect. My voice surprised even me. Calm, steady, almost empty. That's what happens when you've already mourned the answer before hearing it. She went quiet. Not the usual distracted quiet. This one was heavy, careful, like someone deciding which version of themselves they're about to show you. Then she said my name, not the way she used to. This time it sounded like a warning. She told me she didn't wait. Just like that. No build-up. No dramatic confession. A sentence dropped into the space between us like a blunt object. I didn't react. I didn't interrupt. I let her keep talking because I needed to hear how she justified breaking something sacred. She said she was lonely. She said the distance was harder than she expected. She said she needed someone present. Present. That word stayed with me. She talked about long nights, about feeling forgotten, about wanting comfort, conversation, touch. She said it wasn't planned, that it just happened, that she didn't mean for it to go this far, that she still cared about me. Each sentence landed heavier than the last. Not because she cheated, but because of how easily she explained it. I asked her when. She hesitated, then gave a time that rewrote months of my life. Months where I defended her. Months where I blamed myself. Months where I stood in formation, believing someone was standing with me back home. I asked her if she loved him. She said she didn't know. That answer hurt more than yes would have. I asked her why she lied. She said she didn't want to lose me. That was the moment something inside me went completely still, because I realized then my loyalty was never the priority. My sacrifice was never the weight she carried. I wasn't betrayed because I wasn't enough. I was betrayed because convenience mattered more than commitment. She kept talking, apologizing, explaining, crying. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg her to choose me. I didn't ask how to fix it. I didn't even ask if she was sorry in the way that mattered. I just listened as the person I trusted reduced our future to a series of reasons that made sense only to her. She said she hoped I'd understand. That word again, understand, as if love was a schedule problem, as if loyalty had an expiration date, as if waiting was unreasonable when desire showed up early. I felt numb, not calm numb, like my emotions had shut themselves off to survive the impact. My chest was tight, but my mind was strangely clear. I saw her differently now, not as the woman I left behind, but as someone who made a choice and learned to live comfortably with it. I told her I needed time. She asked if we could talk later. I said no, not aggressively, not dramatically, just no, because dignity doesn't announce itself. It simply stops negotiating. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't punch walls. I didn't collapse. The pain was too deep for noise. This wasn't heartbreak. It was disillusionment. The kind that rewires how you see people, promises, and yourself. I thought about all the nights I stayed loyal without applause. All the moments I chose restraint. All the trust one extended without proof. And I understood something brutal and freeing at the same time. Love that depends on convenience isn't love. It's comfort wearing commitment's name. She didn't take my pride from me. She didn't take my worth. She revealed how little mine mattered to her. And in that realization, something shifted. I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. But emptiness has a strange clarity to it. Because when there's nothing left to protect, You finally stop lying to yourself. That night, I didn't lose her. I lost the version of her I invented to survive the distance. And that loss, as brutal as it was the first honest thing I'd felt in a long time. Home didn't feel like home anymore. When I stepped back onto familiar ground, people smiled like I had returned as something finished, complete. They shook my hand. They thanked me. They called me brave. A hero. They spoke to me like I should feel full, like everything I gave had come back multiplied. But inside, there was nothing echoing back. I walked through streets I once knew by heart, and they felt smaller, quieter, like a place I had outgrown without meaning to. My family hugged me tightly, proud, relieved, emotional. My mother looked at me like she was searching for the boy she raised and the man I became at the same time. My younger brother stood taller now, confident in ways that reminded me how much time I had missed. I smiled for them. I showed up. I played my role. But something in me stayed guarded. Like if I relaxed too much, I'd feel everything at once, and I didn't trust myself with that yet. People don't tell you this part about coming back. You don't return to the life you paused. You return to the life that kept moving without you. I saw her once. It wasn't planned, just coincidence. The kind that feels intentional when you're not ready for it. She stood there confident, composed, untouched by the weight I carried. Her voice was steady. Her posture open. No shame. No hesitation. She looked like someone who had already made peace with her choices. And that hurt more than anger ever could. She spoke to me like the past was something distant, like we were two people who had simply grown apart. No apologies. No explanations. Just comfort in who she had become. I noticed the way she spoke freely now, the way she didn't look over her shoulder, the way she didn't ask how I was holding up. He was nearby, the man I once imagined in fragments. Now real, now present. He fit easily into the space I once occupied. Watching them together felt like watching someone else's life, one I had unknowingly stepped out of. I didn't confront her. I didn't demand answers. I didn't explain my pain, because I realized something in that moment. I didn't belong in that chapter anymore. The hardest part wasn't seeing her changed. It was realizing I had changed too, in ways that didn't fit this place. I had learned structure where there was once comfort, silence where there was once noise, control where there was once emotion. The version of me that left could have blended back in. The version that returned didn't know how to pretend anymore. At night, I sat alone in my old room, surrounded by memories that felt borrowed. The walls hadn't changed, but I had. I didn't know who I was without orders, without purpose assigned by rank or routine. I felt displaced in my own history, like I had outgrown a life that didn't know what to do with me now. That kind of identity loss doesn't scream. It hums quietly beneath your skin. You start questioning where you belong, who you are when no one needs you to be strong, when there's no mission to distract you from the emptiness, when applause fades and you're left alone with the truth that survival doesn't always come with clarity. But something else was there too. Not peace, not closure, strength, quiet, unannounced, unimpressive to anyone watching. I realized I didn't need answers from her. I didn't need validation from the past. I didn't need to fit back into a life that no longer fit me. I had stood in places where fear was real. I had survived loss without collapsing. I had carried pain without letting it define my actions. That mattered, even if no one clapped for it. Coming home didn't give me closure. It gave me honesty. I wasn't the man I used to be, and I wasn't meant to be. The world I returned to wasn't wrong. It just wasn't mine anymore. And for the first time since everything broke, I understood that walking forward didn't require belonging to what I left behind. It required accepting that I had changed and trusting that the strength I carried silently would eventually show me where I truly belong. I stopped looking back, not because I had no questions, not because I didn't feel the weight of betrayal, loss, or absence. I still felt it, raw and heavy, lodged in the chest where trust used to live. But I realized something crucial. My pain didn't need permission to exist, and neither did my dignity. For months, I had carried the past like a pack too heavy to ignore. Every memory, every broken promise, every what if followed me into training, into missions, into sleep. I replayed it endlessly, hoping that answers or revenge or some cosmic fairness would make it right. But nothing came. And in that emptiness, I understood the truth. No one was going to hand me closure. I had to choose it for myself. I made a decision, quiet, deliberate, final. I would not beg. I would not chase explanations. I would not let someone else's choices dictate my self-worth or the shape of my future. The betrayal was theirs. My life, my character, my strength, those were mine to reclaim. So I started rebuilding. Physically, I pushed my body harder than ever. I ran farther, lifted heavier, trained longer. Not to punish myself, not to escape, but to remind myself that I was capable of endurance, of resilience, of mastery over the things I could control. My body became a reflection of my resolve, solid and unshakable, shaped by effort and discipline. Mentally, I rewired my thoughts. I refused to ruminate on what could have been or what should have happened. I accepted that some truths are untouchable and some people are immovable. I didn't erase the pain. I acknowledged it, placed it in a compartment, and stopped letting it define me. Emotionally, I stopped giving away pieces of myself I would never get back. The longing, the hope, the excuses, all of it ended. I allowed myself to feel, to grieve, but I didn't beg for understanding or remorse. The fire of anger dimmed, and in its place rose a quiet clarity. I discovered that respect for yourself is the strongest armor anyone can wear. I returned to the pride I had felt in service, but it was no longer tethered to her, to waiting, to proving anything to anyone. I realized my sacrifice had meaning regardless of who witnessed it. My strength, my discipline, my loyalty, they were proof not of love returned, but of the character I refused to compromise. I cut the last emotional ties fully. The past became a reference, not a chain. Names, faces, promises, they existed only as lessons, reminders of what I would no longer allow to control me. There was no anger, no vindictiveness, just a deep, undeniable awareness of my own value. For the first time in years, I felt whole. And in that wholeness, I saw the transformation clearly. The man who left, uncertain and trusting, had died quietly somewhere along the road. In his place stood someone who had been broken, yes, but had chosen to rise anyway. Someone who could endure loss, heartbreak, and betrayal without losing himself. Someone who could carry pain without letting it define the measure of his life. Choosing not to beg or break didn't make me invincible. It made me real. It made me free. And freedom has a weight all its own, heavy, steady, and enough to hold your head high no matter how far the world tries to pull you down. Time moves differently when your heart learns its own rhythm. It had been months, maybe a year, since I had last allowed her presence to touch the corners of my mind. Life moved in its own relentless pace. Training became habit, routines became anchors, and silence became my companion. I had rebuilt myself without her, without waiting, without clinging to the past. And in that rebuilding, I discovered something I hadn't known I could feel, peace without permission. Then she reached out. The message was careful, polite, hesitant, as if she were testing the waters to see if the same heart that once waited for her still existed in the same way. She said she wanted to talk. She apologized. She admitted things. She confessed regret. She told me her life had not turned out as she expected. The man she chose wasn't him in the end, and she wanted me to know. I read her words quietly, letting them sit, letting them land without disturbance. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't feel the old sting of betrayal because I had already dealt with it. I had carried it through pain, through self-reflection, through nights that tested everything I thought I was made of. I had survived it, and in surviving, I had moved on in a way that no apology could undo or disturb. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady, calm, not cold, not bitter, just measured. She listened, and I listened too, not to respond, not to judge, not to punish, but because she had come seeking words and silence would have been dishonest. I acknowledged her apology. I let her speak fully. I didn't interrupt. I didn't react with emotion I no longer felt. My presence in that conversation was not a measure of her importance anymore. It was a measure of my own integrity. Her regret felt like a shadow I used to walk under. Now it passed over me without touching me. I noticed the distance I had built internally. A distance that was not resentment or anger, but clarity. A distance that allowed me to care without clinging, to understand without giving away my center, to recognize her humanity without letting it reopen my wounds. I saw her as she was now, a woman shaped by her choices, by mistakes, by consequences. And I saw myself as I had become, someone who could stand upright, grounded, whole, regardless of her presence or absence. There was no desire for revenge, no longing to teach her a lesson, no need to prove that I was right or that she was wrong. Karmic balance had its own way of moving through the world. I didn't need to participate actively. Time had already acted. Life had already shifted the pieces, and I had claimed my place among them with honesty, with discipline, and with dignity. I realized then that closure doesn't always arrive with confrontation. Sometimes it arrives silently, through self-mastery. Sometimes it comes when you no longer need validation from the people who broke you. Sometimes it comes when your heart has built walls, but those walls are made of understanding, not resentment. We ended the conversation naturally. There was a finality in our exchange that had nothing to do with words. It had to do with recognition. She recognized the distance she had created, and I recognized the peace I had earned. That peace was not fragile. It did not depend on anyone's actions. It was solid, quiet, and irrevocable. I hung up and sat in the stillness of the room. No relief, no anger, no sorrow, just a calm awareness that the chapter had ended in the only way it could have without compromising me. I had carried the weight of love and betrayal, survived, and emerged intact. And in that intactness, I felt a subtle satisfaction. Not because she failed, but because I had succeeded, not in love, but in self-respect. Not in reclaiming her, but in reclaiming myself. When regret knocked on my door, I opened it politely, listened, and then closed it quietly. The world hadn't changed. She had, and so had I. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I didn't need anyone else to restore my life. I already had. I stand here now looking back, and I finally understand. Honor isn't a badge you wear for someone else to notice. It isn't proven by applause, loyalty returned, or promises kept to you. Honor is quiet. It's what you carry in the dark when no one is watching. When the world moves on and you're left alone with yourself, that's when it matters. That's when you know who you are and who you choose to be. I gave my life to something bigger than myself. I left home with pride, with purpose, with the belief that I was protecting a future I thought would include everything I loved. I served with discipline, with courage, and with the full weight of my own expectations on my shoulders. And along the way, I discovered something I hadn't expected, that honor isn't defined by who stays behind for you. It's defined by who you remain, no matter what life tries to take. I learned it the hard way. I learned it through letters that grew shorter, through silence that cut deeper than any battlefield, through the realization that someone I trusted could choose convenience over loyalty. I learned it in those long nights when I wanted to scream, to beg, to fight for what I thought I deserved. I learned it while doing my duty, even when my heart was bleeding and every step felt heavier than the one before. I didn't lose love. That word feels too small, too simple for what happened. I lost an illusion, a version of love that existed only in my mind and my hope. But in losing that, I found myself. I found the part of me that cannot be broken by absence or betrayal. I found a strength to stand without needing anyone else to hold me up. I found a self-worth that doesn't bend to other choices. There were moments I thought I would fall apart, that I would collapse under the weight of disappointment and heartbreak. But survival isn't just about enduring. It's about learning, growing, and reclaiming pieces of yourself you never knew you had. It's about standing tall after you've been tested, about moving forward even when everything behind you whispers that you should stop. I see now that the pain, the loss, the quiet devastation, it was all part of the journey. Every sleepless night, every unanswered call, every betrayal, they were lessons. Not in hatred, not in revenge, not in longing, but in resilience. In understanding that your value isn't measured by someone else's choices. It's measured by how you carry yourself through the storm, by how you honor the person you are beneath it all. I walk forward stronger, grounded, and whole. Not because the world gave me what I wanted, but because I refused to let it take what I already had, my integrity, my discipline, my sense of self. I carry the past with me, yes, but it doesn't weigh me down. It shapes me. It reminds me what I endured, what I overcame, and what I will never compromise again. There is calm in that knowledge. Not arrogance, not pride for show, just quiet certainty that I have honored my life in the truest way. And that is more than enough. I served with honor, not for recognition, not for anyone to witness, not even for the love I thought would wait. I served for myself, and in serving, I discovered the deepest truth. Honor is not proven by who stays. It is proven by who you remain. And I remain whole, strong, unbroken. That is the final victory.